And before we bring April Dunford up on the stage, I just want to say that we are in for a real treat. This last conversation, something I've been really looking forward to for some time. I will say that April and I are actually probably physically the closest right now, because April is literally a few blocks away from me right now. We live in the same neighborhood, and I've known April for many years. Given her leadership in the technology space, she is one of the smartest and most savvy technology marketers in North America. And April spoke at our skucon event 2 years ago that we had in Las Vegas. And her whole thesis is talking about positioning, how it is that we, not only as promotional products people, but just any businesses can position themselves and drive additional value for their businesses and positioning their companies effectively. So I want to welcome April Dunford to the stage. She's going to come up here and we are going to have a conversation about positioning.
There I am. Hello.
Hey, here you are.
I made it. Great. Let me just adjust my camera a little bit.
There you go. Hey, April, it's nice to see you.
Oh, it's
a beautiful day here in Toronto.
All right. Okay, now we're good.
Yeah, we're good. Well, thank you so much for being here. It's funny, as I said, you're literally just a couple blocks around the corner right now.
I know. It's funny. We saw each other on the street the other day, like from across the street. We're socially distancing, so we're far apart.
Yes. It was at least 6 feet for sure. So many of the people on this broadcast are going to recognize you, April, because you were phenomenal at our skucon event a couple of years ago. And
that was fun. This is not as fun as Vegas, but also fun.
Yeah, I know. So I think that the way we wanted to construct this conversation was almost to talk about positioning, and then also talk about positioning in the COVID era. So maybe the first question I'd ask you, April, is can you bring people up to speed about why positioning is important for a business? And then we'll get into how that's adapted with COVID.
Yeah, it's a good question because, I'm a consultant and I focus on positioning, which is maybe a bad thing because most people don't actually understand what positioning is. So I usually have to start by giving people a little bit of that. So positioning is a really old marketing concept, but it's actually fairly misunderstood. I like to define it this way. So positioning defines how your offering is the best in the world at something that a well-defined set of customers cares a lot about. So that's a bit of a mouthful, but that's mainly because positioning is comprised of a bunch of different pieces. So it actually defines who your competitors are, what your capabilities are that make you different from the competitors, how those capabilities drive value, what your value is for customers, and then the definition of who exactly are your best fit customers, so the people that care the most about your value. And then the last bit is kind of market category. Like I work a lot in software and we're always having debates like, is this thing email or is it chat? And it's kind of that. It's how you answer the question, what are you, in a way that makes people understand your value, or at least when I say people, the people that are a good fit for your stuff.
And if we bring this into the promotional products industry, you think about what's unique or maybe not unique about the promotional space is that there's a lot of people in our industry that buy from the same sources and on some levels provide the same kind of value to end clients. And I'm wondering how positioning can be, or the art and science of positioning can be applied to an industry where there is so much sameness. Have you had experiences in working in maybe similar spaces where there's a high degree of commoditization and how positioning is able to really help those companies who embrace it to propel forward?
Right. So here's the thing, like everybody is working in a crowded market right now. Everybody's market is crowded. In fact, in the conference talks that I'm doing right now, I used to show this slide of marketing technology because that's just a randomly selected market. And you think marketing technology, how many companies are there out there that do marketing technology? And I show people this slide and it has 9,000 companies on it.
Yeah,
9,000. And you're like,
sounds like our industry.
Marketing technology for many of these. But then the same thing, like every time I do a talk like that, somebody says, oh no, my market's worse. And so I had this guy, one of the last conferences I did, like before we got shut in the house, I had this guy come up to me after that. He says, no, he says, it's so true. He says, I'm in the drone hardware business. And I'm like, how many companies can there be on the planet that do drone hardware? And he shows me this picture, and it's the map of, all the companies in the drone hardware space. And there's something like 2,000 of them. And I'm like, oh, even in drone hardware, we're in trouble. So the key thing is with positioning is you really have to understand, what is it that makes me different? Even if that difference doesn't feel like a giant, huge point of differentiation, because everybody, we've got 8,000 companies, so we're not all wildly different. But those differences are the reasons why people pick you.
Yeah.
And then the question is, what is it about these weirdo people? They could have picked any of the 8,000 other things on the market, but they picked mine.
Yeah.
And so what you're trying to figure out is that match. What makes you different and special? And what is it about these buyers that are different and special that makes them really care a lot about your point of differentiation? Once you understand that, then you can understand how you're going to go and get more people like that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And it always sounds a little easier said than done, but I suppose that's what we're going to try to tackle here.
It's way easier said than done.
So you spoke, I mentioned it at the beginning that you had spoken at a very different time at the skucon event 2 years ago in Vegas. They were go-go times for the promotional products industry. It's not go-go times for the promotional products industry now. It's not go-go times really for anyone. Yeah. How does positioning shift, or does it, at a time like this?
Yeah. So, it's interesting. When I talk about positioning, I often get this question like, well, can we just set our positioning and forget about it? And like, does it ever have to change? And I'm like, well, yeah, sure, it has to change. And there's kind of 3 or 4 different things that'll happen that will force you to change your positioning. So one is your offerings change. So, you've added things or taken things away from your offering, and that makes it a little bit different, and the way people see it is different. And so you might have to shift your positioning because of that. Sometimes you have a change in the competitive landscape. So in software, we'll have something like a big competitor comes in and does exactly what we do. And then we've got to figure out how we're going to position against this new competitor that's in the space. And then the third category of changes are like what I call things beyond our control. So, and that's things like a change in the regulatory environment. Like all of a sudden there's some regulation that you have to meet and you either do or you don't, and that might change your positioning. But in that class of things beyond our control includes things like what we're seeing right now, which is, a big change in the world, which has an impact on the economy. Now, I'm old, so I've seen a couple of weird economic downturns or sudden shifts in the economy. And you can see that there is often this immediate impact, and you as a vendor may have to switch your positioning in response to that, depending on what's happening with your customers.
April, do you think there is the capacity for businesses to emerge from this crisis in a better shape than going into it?
Oh, sure. I mean, there always is. But so, here's the thing to think about how things shift in a downturn. So it's the thing to think about is what's happening with my customers, and does that potentially impact the way I'm positioning my stuff? So, I used to work for a guy, and he used to say, April, if you're selling to businesses, we've only got 2 things. We're either helping them make money or helping them save money. That's it. Right. And when the economy is good, helping them make money is always the way you want to go, because that always sounds better than saying, yeah, we're going to help you save a couple of bucks. Who cares about that? But I'm going to help you, I'm going to help you grow, expand, get new customers, whatever. Yeah. So that's how it works in a good economy. But then when you have a shift like you have right now, where all of a sudden the economy changes, your customers may be in a position where they're like, you know what, growth is impossible. Like, we're just not growing this year. In fact, we're going to be lucky to survive. And suddenly their priorities shift in such a way that, they used to be all grow, grow, grow. We're going to get more business. That was their number one priority. And now all of a sudden you'll have some customers that would say, you know what, I've got $10 and I need to make it stretch. Yeah. And so all of a sudden saving money or doing more with less becomes a much stronger value proposition than how are we going to make money. So you as the vendor need to first understand, have my customers' priorities shifted? That's the first thing.
Yeah, it's a great
question.
And
then the second thing is, are they shifting short-term or long-term? This is particularly important with this one because we don't know how things are going to happen. And I have software companies that I work with now that when they're talking to their customers, some of them are saying, this is just a couple of months and things will be back to kind of normal by the end of the summer and it'll be okay. I've got other clients where they're talking to, I have one that's selling to banks, and the big banks are essentially changing their budgets and their deployment of people and resources. And these are 24-month plans. Mm-hmm. So if it's a longer term thing, then you as a vendor that's hoping to sell to a bank, you're going to have to shift your priorities too over the long term. Yeah. Now, I think that there are some companies that end up with this really strong value proposition around how are we going to help you do more with less. And sometimes it's the same company that previously had a value prop around how am I going to help you grow, but they managed to navigate this shift to survive through this downturn, and they just come out of that steaming.
I think what's so interesting as to what's happening in the industry, and I'm inspired by some of the comments I'm about to make from what I'm reading from Roger Burnett in the chat. What I will say is that for folks that have questions for April, please feel free to put them in the chat. Ali will organize them so that I can see them because the chat is going fast and furious.
I know, I'll have to look at it too.
Yeah, I know, it's exciting. Okay. And I've got a million other questions, but I want to make sure that we've got the opportunity to interact with the audience too. So the thing that's interesting right now, and I'm going to give an example of a company called Brand Fuel. There's many people on this virtual conference that know Brand Fuel, but for you, April, Brand Fuel is a promotional products distributor that buys and sells the same t-shirts that a lot of us can in this industry, but they have recently really doubled down in something called branded experiences. And there's a really neat video that I was watching on their website just the other day about how they're arranging for basically group empowerment sessions for their clients that are working from home. So they arrange these Zoom meetings. I believe that they bring in a drummer, a professional musician that comes in and engages these end clients in this drum circle, so to speak. But it's not just, flaky drumming. It's really about engagement. It's about company team building. And what Brand Fuel has also been able to do with that is they, of course, provide the swag kits that get to be delivered to everyone's home beforehand. So there's a great revenue opportunity there. There's a revenue opportunity on the experience and the service side. And I just think it's so interesting that now, like, that's a real problem that clients of ours in this industry have now that they never had before. And I just think I think I'm obviously preaching to the choir here, but I think about that's such a great example of how a distributorship that could have just kind of moaned and whined and felt sorry for themselves has repositioned themselves and really doubled down in this experience area so they could drive product sales. So shout out to Danny, Robert, and the whole team at Brand Fuel that's done that.
Yeah. It's interesting. It kind of goes along with some stuff I'm hearing from my clients too. Like, again, back to this idea of, you have these clients that were maybe really focused on growth before and are now a bit hunkered down. Like, one thing you'll get in businesses that are in that mode is they shift from trying to get new customers and doing events and things that they would normally do for new customers. They shift to trying to hold on to their existing customers. And so things that you were doing that were helping to promote new customer acquisition are sometimes taking a back seat, but then a lot of the times that resource is getting reapplied to customer retention. And so it is a great time for people to be doing marketing around customer retention. And so if you're a promotional products business that can help me figure that out, that's great. The other thing that I'm seeing with a lot of my businesses is that it's a great opportunity to do things like what you're talking about there. It's like providing a community space for your customers. And so that's both, in the promotional products business, it's a bit weird because I've got two layers of that, right? You can have a community space where your customers have a chance to get together and hear what everybody else is doing that's new and creative, because things are changing and everyone's freaking out right now. And then what I'm seeing is, even in the software businesses I work with, their own customers, again, are worried about customer retention and are looking to do events and things, activities that their customers get to come together and share with each other, because everyone's in this kind of, oh my God, what are we going to do mode? and the more opportunities there are to bring folks together, the better. Like, I have all these companies that are running customer advisory boards now that have never done a customer advisory board before. And it's one, they need an advisory board now because they need to understand what the heck is going on in the minds of their customers. And two, their customers want to be on an advisory board because they want to hear what everybody else like them is doing, because nobody knows, because no one's got a playbook for this.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting to see what's happened in the last couple of months. And you and I were kind of joking about this on our call a couple of weeks ago. It's like 2-3 years ago, our customers didn't really have classic problems, right? Like, we could, as solution salespeople, we could call them and say, what are your problems? And sure, I'm not trying to be glib. Certainly our clients would have had problems, but now every one of our clients have major problems, like major problems. Like 2-3 years ago, could have been a marketing person would go, well, we want to convert more people at our trade show, but I don't really know. I might just need to order some pens. Can you just help me with the pens? I don't want to talk about my problems. Whereas now it's like, yes, we have seen a massive drop in our clients. Retention is really, really important. And I think it's such a wonderful opportunity for those distributors and suppliers that are positioning themselves well to be able to really listen with open ears to these problems, because it is such a gift to be able to listen to someone's problems and then go back and articulate a solution. So it's a funny thing to be enthusiastic about. But I think
as the person, running the promotional products business, you're talking to all kinds of customers that are all struggling with this stuff. Like, you can come back to that marketing professional and say, here's what I see everyone else doing. Here's what I see working and not working. Here's what I've got. You've got expertise that is really hard for that person on the other end of the phone to get.
Yeah. I love it. Just thinking, we've got a few more moments here, but I want to ask this question that has come up a lot from the industry. Is about this concept of whether I'll phrase it again. Should we be selling, or how should we be proactively selling during a time when clients are under huge stress? Does it look bad to be reaching out, being proactive, but at the same time, you don't want to sit on the sidelines and lose out on the opportunities?
Well,
what's the right way to do this?
Like, I think some people have seen there were some early things that happened right when this thing hit that were just gross, right? They were just gross. Like, it was, it was tone deaf to the seriousness of the situation. But more importantly, like, I think the way you avoid looking like a slimy salesperson in this particular moment is you really have to get inside the heads of your customers and think, how can I be helpful for you? Like, you've got to come with a helpful offer. Otherwise, because it's not about you, it's about them. And I think that the companies that missed the mark on this got so into their own heads, and they were just like, oh, this is about me, and here's an opportunity for me to do something. And customers were just like, dude, read the room.
Yeah. Well, and you think about
this is where I think having a really open lines of communications with customers is a really good thing, because you got to be able to take the temperature of how are these people feeling? What are they worried about? How are their priorities shifted? Again, if you don't have a customer advisory board, like I can't yab on about it enough.
Yeah.
Like there's real value in having a group of customers that have committed to sort of gathering around to have discussions about stuff, because it's going to help you take the temperature on that. Yeah. And it's going to help you from doing these tone deaf things that come from there being a mismatch of what you think is important versus what your clients are thinking important, because this used to be a match and now everything's shifted and it isn't a match anymore.
Yeah, and I would imagine that most customers are probably quite willing to do that, right? They're not as busy, they're at home, they've got the ability to.
You're coming with smart ideas. I mean, they're freaking out. Everyone's freaking out. So if you're coming with smart ideas and saying, "Hey, here's what I see that's working and isn't working," everybody's all ears, I think. The focus has to be on, I'm here to help you out. Here's what I know. Here's what I can do for you. It can't be like, hey, buy some stuff and I'm just going to ignore what's going on in your life and your business and everything else and pretend like everything's like it was the first week of March. It ain't.
Yeah. And I just love how this has created such a great opportunity for those distributors and suppliers that are prepared to listen, because they can come in almost out of nowhere and scoop that business from that incumbent supplier or distributor that has taken the business for granted and isn't prepared to listen. So I think that we all know that. I want to we may have time for maybe one or two more questions. Sure. Marketing channels. Are there any specific marketing channels that you're seeing? And I know you don't know as much about the promotional industry, but maybe with some of the clients that you're working with in technology that are working a little bit more effectively than others now that we're living in this day and age of COVID?
Yeah, well, there's a handful of things that you've seen right out of the gate. Like one is a lot of the big companies just turned off pay-per-click. They just turned it off. Like people just freaked out, turned off pay-per-click. And so AdWords that were expensive are suddenly no longer expensive. And yet they seem to work just as well. So, I think there was some reactionary stuff and there's opportunities there that a keyword that might have been really expensive a couple of months ago is suddenly kind of cheap. That's one. So that's an opportunity. One of the things that I think is not working right now is PR. Like there's basically one news story right now, and that's COVID. And if your news doesn't have anything to do with that, good luck pitching a story to anybody right now. So you've got to have, if you're trying to get coverage, even if it's in a local publication or a local event or a podcast or anything, like that's all anybody wants to talk about. And so you're going to have an angle on that or a thing on that. And if you don't, that's just a place you're not going to spend your money. Like, I don't think you should waste your efforts there. Other stuff, I think it's really dependent on your customers and where they hang out and what they're doing. Like, at the beginning of it, there was some, I heard some buzz online about like podcasts were really hot. But people listen to podcasts on their commute and they're not commuting anymore. And so the podcast listenership dropped off. But now I'm hearing from my podcast people that it's now bounced back up and everybody's settled into routine and they have podcast time of the day, or they're getting out a little bit for a walk or something and listenership is way up. So I don't know. What do you do with that?
No, I think it's really,
I think we're in a time of great change. And I think even what we're saying now might be different a month from now. It's so weird. Everything's weird.
Maybe as a quick, maybe final comment on that. I've seen video has really exploded in the promotional products industry because people have the time to do it. And people are on their computers all day, and they're really looking for ways to engage.
And everybody's gotten over their fear of video too. Like I hate doing video personally, and I've done so much video in the last month. It's ridiculous.
I know. It's crazy. Well, and this is a good example of how this is effectively this video. It just happens to be live. So April, I want to make sure that we're respecting your time and really appreciate this. There's, again, been lots of chatter and a lot of conversations. And again, we would love the opportunity to follow up, and maybe we could get some questions that weren't answered throughout our 25 minutes. But this was very enlightening. It's always wonderful speaking with you. My head always hurts afterwards because you just you have a way with ideas. And thank you so much on behalf of the entire
thanks so much for having me. It's good to see you guys.
April, you're awesome.
Hi, Catherine. All right. Well, yeah, thanks so much for having me. And yeah, maybe I'll pop into the chat too. But I think now I'm supposed to click the leave button. Is that what?
Yeah. Thank you so much, April.